Well, hello, everybody. This is, once again, your favorite speaker, Dr. Ronald J. Brown. And our topic for today is looking into the future. What is going to be the shape of religions in the 21st century and the third millennium? On the right, you see me on one of my recent visits to Rome. Well, the Catholic Church is 2,000 years old, has been around a long time, as have most of the other world religions, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, all these ancient religions, some of them going back much longer than even the Catholic Church. Going back, Judaism is thousands of years older. Hinduism, probably considered the oldest major world religion, going back more thousands of years. Well, when we look into the 21st century and the third millennium, we sort of have to shift gears and say, well, what is going to be religion in the future? Things are changing so fast. Think of transportation. When St. Paul would take a rickety old boat and cross the Mediterranean to go to preach in Anatolia, modern day Turkey, and Italy and Greece. Well, today you get on a jumbo jet and you're halfway around the world in a matter of hours. Communication, there's no longer writing a letter, giving it to somebody, and it arrives months later. Today, you can send an email, and within a minute, you get a response from some other end of the world. So times are changing. It's not your old time religion anymore. So, as I always say, when we look into the future, fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be a pretty bumpy ride. So, what are the factors which are going to influence religion in the third millennium? Well, I have listed 6. You could probably list more if you'd like, but I'm going to concentrate today on these 6. First, super empowered clerics. Today, if you are a rabbi or a priest or a preacher, or you declare yourself God, you have at your disposal all kinds of technological advances that nobody in the future could even dream of. You can have a virtual congregation where you can sit like I am in my bedroom, converted into office, and I can reach an audience of millions. I don't know if millions are going to be watching me in these programs, but still, it is a possibility. Transient. Well, the Catholic Church has been around for 2,000 years as an institution. Well, in this day and age, prophets and gods seem to come and go. New religions emerge. Religions disappear. Ancient religions fade into insignificance. Just like yesterday's fashions or today's popular restaurant in New York, everything changes at a speed unimaginable in the past. The gods of the third millennium are going to be global with modern communications and transportation. You can have a person who declares himself a founder of a new religion in some country in the middle of Africa, and within days, this person can reach an audience around the world. Another characteristic of the third millennium, it is human perfectibility. People today are no longer sitting around waiting for happiness in heaven. They want a little bit of love and happiness and prosperity here on this earth. Standard of living is increasing. The age to which people live is increasing. So there's no reason to sit around and suffer in this world and hope for heaven when we're dead. Point 5, religions are political. Religions are not off in a monastery somewhere or a person meditating up on a hilltop. People are running for public office, as we see as I speak. We had the reign of Donald Trump and Jared Kushner in Washington for a good number of years. And Donald Trump was doing the work of God in the eyes of Jews and evangelical Protestants. And finally, religion today is transcendent. It is a vision which transcends time. We look back for inspiration, we mobilize it today, and we send it off into the future. So let's get started. One by one, we'll go through what religions are going to look like in the third millennium. Well, first, super-empowered individuals. This term, a super-empowered individual, was coined by Thomas Friedman, a New York Times journalist who wrote many books. And in his book, Longitudes and Attitudes, he wrote that today, someone who is a nobody can amass unbelievable amounts of power. When we look at the past, we always think, oh, it's kings and generals and dictators and emperors who determined history, or it was the great royal families that ended up running the world. Well, today, if you are ambitious and clever, you can wield more power than the kings and emperors and dictators of the past. George Soros, a Hungarian Jew, migrated to the United States and is now founding universities, influencing attitudes in foreign countries, literally waging war in countries like Hungary and Russia and China, as he not only has trillions of dollars in resources and is founding universities, but he is calling dictators and kings to account for their crimes. His open society is a vision, and he has the resources to make it a global movement. Names that we recognize: Mark Zuckerberg, a college student who ended up wielding enormous power in America. Robert Murdoch, the titan of the press, determines what we read, what we see on television. Powerful person. Oprah Winfrey, a personality who, from humble backgrounds, emerged and became a spokesperson on television. Whenever she brings up a book in her book discussion sections, well, you can be sure that well before that book is even mentioned on her program, every bookstore was alerted that Oprah is going to talk about this on Thursday. They had stacks of the books. She signed them. And of course, she gets a good cut for every book sold and has become one of the most powerful, wealthiest, and influential women in this new world of super empowered men and women. Edward Snowden, literally overthrowing governments, discrediting leaders by his revelation of secret documents. Osama bin Laden, an individual who emerged from Saudi Arabia, got enormous power, launched his own Islamic political movement, and even went so far as to declare war on the United States. Warren Buffett, Jack Ma, just a small number of these people. We can all become Wonder Woman or Superman. Well, how do these people amass power? And it's not just titans of the press or of the internet or of documents, but they are also religious leaders who are starting to avail themselves to the marvels of modern technology. You can have the Pope gallivanting around the world, having big giant meetings and sessions and saying mass before millions of people. And of course, it is communicated on the internet, by newspapers, by television. Modern transportation combined with the internet, Google, all of these can make any person, if that person knows how to use modern technology, any person can become a superstar. Modern technology is making humans live longer. So when you have a life expectancy of maybe 80, 90, or even 100 years, you want every bit of science to keep you going. You want your biopsies, your MRIs, your organ transplants, even artificial hips and knees. So modern technology is not only available for humans to use, but it is transforming what it means to be human. Virtual reality, neuroscience, global finance. If you have the skill to harness this technology to your particular ideology or your particular new religion, you too can become a religious superstar today. Cryptocurrencies, global finance, well, you can raise funds all over the world. In fact, that's one of the characteristics of a lot of the televangelists. Raise money, touch the screen, and you will be healed, and send me a check when you're done. So, mastering modern technology can make anyone a superstar. Virtual church, using the internet, Google, using an ATM, you too can establish your own church. And you don't have to build a big marble and stained glass edifice. You don't have to gather your congregation in one place. You can have a religion scattered around the world, and everybody comes together for your church service. Many religions do this. In fact, I have a friend who is an Ethiopian priest here in the United States. Well, the Ethiopians are scattered all over the world. I mean, with the exception possibly of Washington, D.C. and Virginia, and to a less extent, probably New York, the Ethiopians are all over the country. Well, they can log on Sunday morning and they can have their own religious services. So, virtual churches is one of the results of this modern technology. And you can advertise your church. You can go on Google, have a site. You can have an internet network where people are communicating, people are having Zoom meetings and virtual churches without the stone walls, without the stained glass. You can have a virtual religious movement. Lubavitchers, a Jewish Orthodox sect, has harnessed this technology, traveling all over the world, building synagogues, finding the lost Jews and bringing them back to religious worship. Another way that technology is changing what we do is you can even establish your own army. Osama bin Laden was very successful in rallying an army that wasn't located in one place, but scattered all over the world. Individuals can have their own space stations. We see China building one, and even private individuals can build a space station. Buddhist monks can be isolated somewhere up in a mountaintop, but daily in contact with their friends through cell phones. And so all kinds of new religious movements have a very good chance of being successful. And it's not just militaries which are using modern technology. It's not just old traditional religions which are using new technology, but new people, some rabbi who comes up with some unique way of preaching Judaism or interpreting Judaism can overnight have a following of millions. Above, we see a Brazilian church, evangelical church, which came out of nowhere and today has millions of followers, even building an imitation of Solomon's temple in Sao Paulo. So, not just military, not just governments, and not just traditional religions are using modern technology, but new religious movements as well. Well, many people have been able to master modern technology. In fact, Billy Graham, with all of his giant ceremonies held in stadiums, Madison Square Gardens, was an early master of radio, television, global travel, and mass communications. In fact, a couple of years ago, he gave what he called his last world crusade. He gave it here in New York City. So I wrote him a letter. And I said, "Oh, I've been an admirer of you for a long time. I'd like to volunteer for your crusade." Well, sure enough, I was asked to be an usher at his big crusade out in Flushing Meadows Park. Hundreds of thousands of people, either in person or on Zoom or on television or on the internet, were able to listen to him speak. Another person who has become a religious superpower is Menachem Schneerson, who recently passed away, the leader of the Lubavitcher Jewish sect, gathering the survivors of the Holocaust, creating a whole new religious movement with shlichim, what they call their missionaries, going out around the world, searching for the lost Jews, bringing them back to orthodoxy. The Dalai Lama, think of a mountain retreat of Buddhism. Well, he is jetting around the world, meeting with presidents, meeting with world leaders, and becoming a major personality. Televangelist Joel Osteen and Edir Macedo. Joel Osteen in the United States, Edir Macedo in Brazil, mastering the power of modern communications, modern banking, modern fundraising, modern evangelization. The Dhammakaya movement in Buddhism in Thailand, phenomenal big pilgrimage center sending out missionaries all over the world. Mother Teresa was a major personality. Her religious order of nuns, originally in India, is now scattered around the world. And of course, Osama bin Laden, declaring war against the United States. And when his group destroyed the World Trade Center, he accomplished what Stalin and Hitler could not: the bombing of the American mainland. I mean, and I watched the Tower #2 collapse before my very eyes, taking pictures of it as it went down. I mean, to think that a super empowered religious leader like Osama bin Laden could gather so much power, so much influence, such a following, so much money, that he, as an individual, could declare war against the United States with all of its weapons of mass destructions, atomic bombs, super carriers and submarines. But yet he was able to subject the United States to a major defeat. Edir Macedo in Brazil, one of the new religious leaders who emerged, and according to Forbes magazine, one of the wealthiest people in the world. And in Sao Paulo, we see his recreation of the Temple of Solomon. Below that, that's me standing beside the palm trees at the front door. Here again, his church, the Igreja Universal, is scattered around the world. In fact, there's one not far from where I live in New York City. Here again, emerged from nowhere and is now the leader of a fast growing religious movement. In fact, the president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, is a member of this church. And many people say that his church, Igreja Universal, now has more power, more influence, and even more followers than the Catholic Church in Brazil. In Mexico, it's La Luz del Mundo, and we see the pictures on at the bottom is their Vatican in Mexico. That's me visiting one of their churches in Mexico City. You see the inside on the left, and on the right, you see the exterior. Phenomenal architecture. Whenever you see a church of Luz del Mundo, the light of the world, you know that that is their church. It's all white and gold and stained glass. Actually, it's plastic, but still, I mean, giant speakers. I went to church there not long ago in Mexico City, and they had preachers calling in and preaching on the screen from all over the world. Even here in New York, in Jackson Heights, there's a big church of La Luz del Mundo. Here again, becoming a major political force in Mexico. In fact, the president of Mexico today is no longer a Catholic, but he is an evangelical Protestant belonging to one of these new evangelical churches, which emerged out of nowhere, mastered modern technology, mass communications, mass travel, and is now spreading around the world. Last year, I visited their big house of worship in Paris, where Mexican migrants are taking their religion with them, gathering other converts in France, and growing. Well, another characteristic of religions in the third millennium is the transient. New religions emerge. They leave their mark on a society. They flourish, and then very often they decline. For example, Robert Harold Schuller built his giant crystal cathedral in Los Angeles, California. Once again, modern architecture, eye-catching, a brilliant preacher, one of the largest church organs in the world, attracting thousands of people. You could either go inside the church or you could sit in your car and watch it on your screen from the parking lot, or you could log on and you could watch it wherever you happen to be. Many people would put it on giant screens in their houses and invite followers to come in and to listen to Reverend Schuller preach. Well, he had a brilliant career, very much California style religion. But when he died in 2015, this moment of glory passed. In fact, the church today is now a Catholic church. Well, nobody expects these new religious movements to last forever. I mean, I always tell my students that there are more religions in the garbage can of history than there are alive today. Think of how many people worship the gods of the Egyptians, and now the only place you ever hear about them is in a museum. The gods of the Aztecs, the Mayas, the African people. Well, this is one of the characteristics of today. Nobody wants to wear last season's fashions. Everybody wants the latest cell phone, the newest computer, a brand new car. My sister's forever throwing out perfectly good furniture because she's tired of it and wants a brand new living suit. So here again, transient is part of our modern civilization. Nobody repairs shoes anymore. You wear them, they get a hole, you pitch them, and you pick up another pair. Well, transient does not mean that they are insignificant. The Taliban emerged, was a major power. World Trade Center attack, Muslim movements, that's ISIS and the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. All of these brand new movements emerge. They leave their mark on history, and many of them will disappear. And just like our fashions, and just like our latest film from Hollywood, or the latest music group, our world is one of transience. We don't expect everything to be the same for our entire life. My God, society is changing so fast. I'm old enough to remember the first electric typewriters. Well, I jumped at the computer when they became available. And while I'm no tech whiz, I use every new invention, whether it's a YouTube video, a Zoom conference, a conference call. Well, I'm always looking forward to the next invention. So everything is transient. Now, that does not mean it doesn't leave a mark on history, because when you have 3 or 4 religious groups fighting for world power, it can be a pretty bloody conflict. But then again, televangelists are attacking each other, fighting for revenue, fighting for followers. Missionaries are out there trying to convert everybody from this religion to that religion. It's a pretty bloody religious world. Jonestown Massacre in 1978. Mass suicide became part of the religion. They believed that when all these almost 1,000 people committed suicide, that it would hasten the coming of Jesus, the apocalypse, the end of the world. And this was a temporary religion, influenced a lot of people. Jim Jones and his People's Temple was the epitome of a temporary religious movement which brought about its own ending in headline gathering and bloody style. The Japanese doomsday cult of Aum Shinrikyo, here again viewing themselves as the end of days, out to provoke a catastrophe to bring about the end of the world. David Koresh and the Waco siege, Scientology, growing, controversial, possibly even declining. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Schneerson, even was declared by his followers, although he never said it, but he didn't oppose it when they declared himself the Messiah. So another aspect of religion in the third millennium is people are very concerned with the end of time, the apocalypse, the end of the world. And so if your religion preaches mass suicide, it is for a good cause, to bring about the end of the world. Other great preachers such as Jim Bakker, Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker, PTL, Praise the Lord, great television personalities, but once again ended up in total disaster. Jim Bakker's book, Prosperity and the Coming Apocalypse, here again, sort of this obsession with we have a message, and that is to prepare for the end of the world. Nothing is going to survive the end of the world, not even Tammy and Jim Bakker. Other movements rose, such as Hare Krishna. Now, when these movements arose, such as the Hare Krishna, I mean, these were ex-Catholics, ex-Jews, ex-Muslims, ex-Protestants who were simply finding nothing in their religion of their families and set off to a new religion and started lining the streets and the bus stations and the train stations, preaching a new religious movement. Well, when the Catholics and Jews and Protestants saw so many of their young people drifting into one of these cults or sects or new religious movements, the churches had to start reacting or they were going to disappear as well. On the right, we see Osama bin Laden. Well, his rise to fame, his moment of glory, and his rapid decline still influenced Islam very, very much. It shaped the reaction of many Muslims to reject Western materialism, to reject Western religions, and even to reject this fascination with modern technology. And Muslims had to respond to the rise and success, in the eyes of bin Laden, the success of his movement. So we see more and more new religious movements emerging. I mean, you don't see Hare Krishna as much anymore. Many of the cults and sects have declined, and who knows what the future will be. But when they emerge, they always have a strong message. Osama bin Laden's message was, stop being fascinated by Europe and start returning to strict Islam. Well, other religious leaders have risen, flourished, and declined. And when they decline, it's always a question, is the movement going to decline with it? Well, on the left, we see Reverend Moon of the Unification Movement. He rose, amassed great wealth, founded a global religious movement, And then with his passing, the movement went into crisis. His wife is trying to keep it alive, but it is more or less now paralyzed because nobody knows what the future of the movement is going to be. Billy Graham, 2018, passed away. Menachem Schneerson passed away and really left two big religious movements in a period of crisis. Is there going to be a replacement for Billy Graham? His daughter and his son are trying to keep the movement going, but when you have charismatic preachers like Reverend Moon, Billy Graham, Menachem Schneerson, charismatic personalities, very often a religious movement will rise, flourish, and decline with the life of the charismatic founder. Another aspect of religion in the third millennium is with the use of new technology, even some little obscure religion lost in the jungles of Africa has the possibility of becoming a global movement. Again, Menachem Schneerson of the Lubavitchers gathered a handful of Orthodox survivors of the Holocaust, took them to Brooklyn, organized them, inspired them, and attracted all kinds of followers. And these followers are inspired to go out and to find other lost Jews. Famous book by Sue Fishkoff, The Rebbe's Army. Once again, an individual who had great power, even in Israel or the United States. When he spoke, presidents, mayors, and governors had to respond, even to the point that his followers declared him the Messiah. Such great power in the hands of one man is absolutely a sign of religion of the future. But it is global. Famous Rajneesh left India, came to the United States, built his utopia in Oregon in the 1980s. Here again, Hinduism burst upon the American religious scene with a vengeance. Thousands of kids who were raised Jewish or Catholic or something suddenly were attracted by Rajneesh, went off to his compounds and became fervent followers. And not just in Oregon and India, but throughout the world, where Hinduism, a religion predominantly of India or of immigrants from India to other countries, suddenly became a global religion with Africans, South Americans, Europeans, Chinese, Canadians joining in this new religious movement. The Mormons, probably the most American of all religions, adapted the system that young men and now young women following their graduation from college are required to do 2 years of missionary service, learning a language in an immersion system, and they're off to someplace in Africa or China or India or South America. As I speak, there are more Mormons outside the United States than there are in the United States. The Dalai Lama, world following. I saw one of his big conferences in Central Park several years ago. Once again, a Buddhist monk using modern technology, television, internet, the jumbo jet to spread the Tibetan Buddhism around the world. So it's moved from the top of the mountain to the world, just like Salt Lake City Mormonism is now a global phenomenon, or Hinduism under Rajneesh is now a global phenomenon. Little groups that we hardly ever hear of or who have declined are now, if they're clever and they have a good, super empowered leader, can become a global phenomenon. The Jains, originally from North India, spread through migration, but are now in the age of ecological crisis, attracting large numbers of followers. They do not believe in killing any animal, so they are vegetarian. They won't even swat a fly. And so they have really become a very popular, ecologically sensitive religion. Zoroastrianism, probably the oldest monotheistic religion in the world, a religion of the book. Here again is now growing. Pentecostals in the United States, the whole born again movement is attracting people all over the world. You can be a criminal, you can be in jail, you can have a life sentence, but when you join the Pentecostals, you can be born again. Voodoo, New Orleans tourist traps, Haitian jungle and waterfalls in the forest, now through migration, has become a global religion. And more people are finding this return to nature and return to magic a major phenomenon. So today you can find voodoo temples, not just in Brooklyn and other areas where Haitians have migrated, but around the world. And so this kingdom of the cults is a reality, that it is no longer some little cult tucked away in some obscure corner of India or Africa or Haiti, but now in this modern world of globalization, religions are global. Look at the rise in the population of Mormons. Pretty well stable until the 1870s, 1890s, 1910s. But by 1950, it had reached 1 million, and it was the stratosphere from 15 to 2000, adding huge numbers of millions. Well, this growth was not in the United States. Look at the map in the middle. You see Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Mexico, giant Mormon temples and churches wherever you go. So here again, it was not Joseph Smith who led to the growth of the Mormons, but it was the ability of Mormons beginning in the 50s to use television, to use radio, to use world travel to attract millions of followers in the Americas, in Europe, Australia, Nigeria, and Africa. Here again, today, if you use modern technology, any little religious movement can become a global phenomenon. Hare Krishna, Unification Movement, Wicca, witchcraft now have their own websites. They have their own online shops and conferences and are definitely using every aspect of modern technology. Many of these new movements have tried to join the World Council of Churches or the American Council of Churches, which are suspicious of these movements because they say, well, in this world, who knows how long they're going to last? Once the charismatic founder is gone, the followers drift away and look for the next big religious movement. Samuel P. Huntington has chronicled in his book, The Clash of Civilizations, the competition between religions and civilizations for domination of the 21st century and the third millennium. The fourth characteristic is human perfectibility. Here again, in the past, religions have always cultivated the belief that humans can become perfect. Well, in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, we have the old Babylonian legend of the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, when we were once perfect and we declined. And so recreating this Garden of Eden, making humans perfect, making them live forever, overcome disease, has become very much a part of world religions, as the idea of happiness after we're dead is replaced by the quest for happiness and perfection here in this world. This idea of human perfectibility takes roots. Norman Vincent Peale, during the Great Depression, came out with his powerful book, The Power of Positive Thinking. Overcome the depression, get your money back, be happy here on earth. Even monasteries have viewed this belief in the perfectibility of humans. Buddhist monasteries in isolation up in the mountains, or a Benedictine monastery. Go to the monastery, overcome your imperfections, and become a saint. That's what was behind the Catholic tradition of confession. Confess your sins to the priest, do penance, and promise never to do these sins again. And you too can become a saint. Buddhism, once again, believing very much in the perfectibility of humans, right mindfulness, the 8 paths, right view, right intention, right speech. Purge yourself of imperfections and follow the path, which you see on the right, a very Buddhist image. Follow the path to perfection, and you too can become pure and perfect. Well, this is a major feature of modern cults and sects and even mainstream religions. Christianity, which traditionally baptized babies, has now seen a real rise in adult baptism. Don't get baptized when you're a baby, when you have no say in it, but you can be born again, no matter how terrible you were in the past, a criminal, drug dealer, prostitute. If you go to a church that lets you be born again, you too can start on your path to perfection. That was Martin Luther's original teaching, Sola Scriptura. In fact, you have a direct relationship with God. You don't need priests and ministers and rabbis and imams, but you, even by just studying the Bible, can start on your path to perfection. And so this is a major feature in Christianity, accepting Jesus as your personal savior. The Lubavitchers, being a born-again Jew, many Muslims embracing Islam after years of ignoring it, a born-again Muslim. This appeals to people who want a major change in their lives. Another group that has grown to global proportions is Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard. Still very, very future oriented. You see, Dianetics, the evolution of a science, says this is not about belief and magic and rituals, but it is a scientific religion. Large element of self-analysis, psychology. Everybody's going to a therapist. Once again, make yourself perfect. Purge yourself of weaknesses and set off on your path to human perfection. Well, human perfection is not just psychological, it's not emotional, but it is also very this worldly. I mean, people like Joel Osteen preaches, God wants us to prosper financially, to have plenty of money, to fulfill the destiny he has laid out for us. Religions today are very material, prosperity oriented. Creflo Dollar, I always love that name. I don't know if that's his real name or not, but it reflects his teaching. You're supposed to be wealthy. These preachers don't stand there in sackcloth and ash. They wear flashy gold jewelry, diamonds, tailored suits. They have limousines. Picture on the right, Father Divine, Sweet Daddy Grace in Harlem, showing that you too can be wealthy. Power sermons. Here again, have power. Become a super empowered individual. You too can do it. Well, many people criticize what is called the prosperity gospel. You see the Time magazine. Does God want you to be rich? Well, according to Creflo Dollar and according to Joel Osteen and Pastor Tony Lee and many, many others, don't wait until you're dead for happiness, material prosperity, and perfection. You can have it here in this world. Well, human perfectibility is very much part of it, our reality. You can be wealthy, you can be powerful, and even science is coming to the rescue. In the future, we will be cyborgs. Our human body can be made perfect. Hip replacements, dispensers of medicines which are implanted in your body, surgery. All of this new modern technology is making the body perfect, overcoming diseases. There's a good chance I will live to be well over 100. Both of my parents died in their mid 90s, and coming from good stock, I could perfectly well expect to live to be 100. MRIs, biopsies, eliminate things, cancer screenings, body replacements. Pretty soon it'll be artificial hearts or lab grown kidneys to replace our wearing out hardware. Fantastic book and film Transcendence starring Johnny Depp. Here again, he became so perfect that he even left his human body. When we can live in temporary bodies or live in a computer, fascinating movie to watch where we leave our biological body. Well, it's going to be sometime in the future before I'll leave my wearing out body, but science is going to gradually make the kuman a perfect vessel, one that doesn't die and suffer from terrible diseases. Ray Kurzweil, 2045, the year humans become immortal. We will be omniscient, omnipotent. We will become gods, as it says in Genesis, and ye shall be as gods. Here again, not just knowing good and evil, but living forever, all knowing, when our brain can be plugged into a computer or a mini computer and memory stick flash drive can be permanently implanted in our brains. So if somebody asks me, what did you have for dinner on July 13th, 1972? I will just access it in my memory banks and I can tell you. Human perfection. Well, religions are also political. Once again, whether it is Pat Robertson getting involved in politics. Well, forget about the separation of church and state. When you have people like Pat Robertson and his 700 Club get involved in politics, vote, support candidates, religion is political by its very nature. Well, Americans and everybody else have always had this dream of recreating the Garden of Eden, whether it is the Oneida community up in upstate New York, a perfect society here on earth, socialism and communism, heaven on earth, the social gospel of the years following Civil War in the United States, overcoming alcoholism, overcoming ignorance, overcoming poverty and disease. Even the Jews got into heaven on earth when the Zionists decided to leave the countries of the world, recreate their own earthly kingdom, and achieve the biblical dream of a mighty Jewish empire from the Nile to the Euphrates. This utopian vision is not just a vision, but religions are actively creating heaven on earth. Confucianism, they don't believe in God and heaven and hell and all that kind of stuff. Confucianism is a political movement on how to build the perfect society. The emperor at the top and going down through peasants, artisans, merchants, slaves. Well, go to China today, and when you look at the Chinese Communist Party, it is basically Confucianism painted red, such as the book in the middle, China's New Confucianism. Basically, Confucianism and communism aimed at the same goal, heaven on earth. The Israelis are militant about building their Jewish empire in the Middle East. Avram Kook said Judaism is a preeminently political movement. Build West Bank settlements, round up the Palestinians, dump them into walled compounds, steal the land, and replace Palestinian Christians and Muslims with a great Jewish empire. This, when people talk about political Judaism or political Islam, well, these religions have always been political. And this politicization of religions is growing in intensity. The BJP in India is political Hinduism. Make India Hindu again. Get rid of the Christians, the Muslims, the Jews, the Sikhs, and the Jains and the Buddhists. Destroy the mosques, the churches, the synagogues, and make India Hindu again. Even Buddhism, which has always been viewed as a peaceful religion, is now in countries like Cambodia, Thailand, especially Burma, is turning to political Buddhism. Build a Buddhist empire. Get rid of non-Buddhists. When I was in Thailand, I saw Buddhist monks training in the military, where you have religious orders of military monks to get rid of Hindus and Christians and Jews and non-Buddhists. We saw recently the expulsion of 1 million Rohingya Muslims from Burma. Make Burma Buddhist again, a Buddhist government. In the United States, we saw this politicization of Christianity with Pat Robertson, build a new world order based on Christianity. Donald Trump, make America great again, get rid of Buddhists and Hindus and Jews and Muslims and make America Christian again. The evangelical Christians are now deeply involved in politics, major supporters of Donald Trump. Well, another aspect of religion in the future is what I call transcendent religion, where the past inspires the present and the present is very future oriented. ISIS and the other Islamic movements are obsessed with the caliphate. The caliphate was a chain of caliphs that was established by the Prophet Muhammad, and like the popes in Rome, have an unbroken chain. Well, unfortunately, it was Turkey and the Western countries which abolished the caliph after World War I. Well, this memory of the caliphate still remains very strong among Muslims. And what their goal is, groups like ISIS, Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, is to restore this ancient institution. So it's not just a new religious movement popping out of nowhere, but most of these cults and sects and the religious movements of the future, which are extremely future-oriented, do have their deep roots in the past. Restore the caliphate, unite the Muslim world, the Ummah, unite Muslims as they were under the Prophet Muhammad. And you see Muslims restoring the caliphate with ISIS starting out to unite the Muslim world, restore the caliphate, and recreate the Muslim world empire. Jews are obsessed with the great empire of King Solomon. When the Jewish empire in the Middle East actually reached the Euphrates River in what is today modern Syria and Iraq. It occupied Jordan, huge areas of what is today Saudi Arabia, and aimed at taking over the Egypt up to the Nile River. And so the Jews are as obsessed with as the Muslims with their lost glory of empire, and are now viciously out to recreate it, dump the Muslims in glorified concentration camps, take over the country, and expand it to its promised boundaries, as in the Jewish Bible. Even David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, saying that we, the Jewish people, have our own map. And that map shows a great, powerful Jewish empire from the Nile to the Euphrates. So the past very much inspires the present, and their vision of an earthly empire is a powerful element in the religions of the present. And even old religions, such as Judaism, aim to restore their ancient empire, just as the Mormons and more new religion aim at converting the world to the Mormon church, or the evangelical Christians, the same thing. Hinduism looks very much back to its ancient past. The map on the bottom left shows the once great influence of Hinduism. And this is not just India, but it is Tibet, Burma, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan at one time were Hindu. We tend to forget that. You go to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. It was originally a Hindu temple covered with the gods of the Hindus. In Indonesia, there's still giant Hindu temples going back to the golden age of Hinduism. Well, of course, the Hindus lost their empire. Pakistani and Bangladesh converted to Islam. Burma and Thailand and Vietnam converted to Buddhism. Indonesia converted to Islam. Malaysia, Islam or Christianity. But the Hindus remember this great empire and consider that it is their goal to restore Hindu greatness. And this is not a spiritual quest. This is a political quest. Get rid of the Muslims and Jews and Christians, because the Indians say that the Indian Muslims were one time Hindu and they were forcibly converted, or the Christians were converted by aggressive European missionaries. So the modern Hinduism is deeply political and not so much spiritual as it is building an empire here on earth. In fact, one of the newest gods of Hinduism is Mother India, Bharat Mata. See the pictures in the middle where it shows Mother India with the map of India behind her as the #1 goddess of ancient India. The Hindu movement is called Hindutva, meaning Hindu nationalism, not Hindu religion, but Hindu political movement. Well, this goal of recreating past greatness is very, very much a global phenomenon. In Russia, see the big Russian Orthodox Church. Well, when I lived in Moscow in the early 90s, that was a swimming pool built by Stalin and Lenin and other religious leaders. Destroy the church, which was almost identical to the one they just rebuilt a couple years ago, and restore Holy Russia. Well, this is very much in the Russian worldview. On the right, you see the new mosque being built in Istanbul. Return Turkey to its Muslim roots. Woman in the middle, Aung San Suu Kyi in Burma. Once again, very much a Burmese nationalist leader. Same thing in the United States. Make America Christian again. Donald Trump, going back to the years before the gates of immigration were opened in 1965, going back to the time when the American century, following World War II, when America was white and Christian, without all of these Jews and Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and other pagans wanting to return to the time, as you see on the graph on the right, when immigration had stopped and not all these new people coming in. Now, whether Donald Trump actually is a Christian or not, who knows? But the fact is that he has the support of the evangelicals who want to return to Christian America. So as religions move into the future, they are not your old religions from the past. And as people like Jürgen Moltmann, a great theologian, look into the future, they're seeing a very new religious world, a world of conflict, of competition. God is not dead. God is very much alive. And as a friend of mine said, she is angry. Well, Islam is the religion that is projected by the year 2060 to have become by far the largest religion in the world. Christians would be second, Hindus, and then Jews and the other religions. Buddhism is destined to decline unless they have a reborn again experience. So religions are very much alive and they are shaping the future. Well, technology is going to continue to evolve. The world is going to continue to become more and more complex, and the religions of the world are going to be more and more aggressive. So religion and technology of the future, well, religions of the past are going to have to either get their act together and compete, or they will remain a lifeless shell of a past religion. So that's me in Rio de Janeiro with the monumental statue of Jesus behind me. Always traveling around the world looking for new ideas, new expressions of religion in the future. So this is Dr. Ronald Brown logging off. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you in the future. So goodbye. Have a good day.